A fascinating weekend in Indonesia with lots of action all throughout the weekend, both in qualifying, which was excellent, and throughout the race as well. Jorge Martin took the MotoGP World Championship lead for the first time ever, but quickly relinquished it to Pecco Bagnaia, and that was just a couple of the interesting things that happened this weekend. So let's take a look at the 5 things we learned from the Indonesian Grand Prix. Title turns. As discussed in the intro, the title turned twice this weekend, as Pecco Bagnaia qualified only 13th, failing to get into Q2. He then had a difficult sprint race as he ended up being unable to really make any progress forward, while Jorge Martin did an excellent job from 6th on the grid, pushing through and winning the sprint race in a pretty dominant fashion. However, when it got to the feature race, the table would kind of turn, as Jorge Martin once again did have a good start, but would end up throwing the championship lead, which he'd gained after the sprint race, back into Pecco's lap with a crash from a relatively dominant position. It means that the title turned twice, as Jorge Martin took the lead for only about 24 hours and then quickly lost it and now trails Pecco by 18 points. Still, the title is close and it keeps it interesting as Jorge Martin's dominant run is ended, and we'll have to see how it plays out. I still think that Jorge Martin will probably punch back at Phillip Island, but there are fewer points now and it means that it's going to get interesting down towards the end of the season. Champions Ride. So we've discussed how Pecco Bagnaia regained the championship lead in the feature race because the story was very different from his difficult sprint race. He did an excellent job to climb from 13th on the grid all the way to first place, taking full advantage of Jorge Martin's mistake. It was a real champion's ride as he pushed through the field and did some really clean, good overtakes, did benefit from a fair bit of attrition, but still it was an excellent job from Pecco Bagnaia as he took maximum points while Jorge Martin couldn't take any. A real champion's ride. The other champion on the grid who had an excellent weekend this weekend was Fabio Quartararo, who also did a very good job with his still very slow Yamaha to get 3rd place. He actually probably was fast enough for 2nd or even the win if, as we know, the Yamaha wasn't so difficult to use to overtake. So he was struggling to get past Maverick Vinales, but had he been able to, I think he had more than enough pace to take the win. So an impressive ride also from Fabio Quartararo. Injured riders. It wasn't just the 2021 and 2022 world champions this weekend who had a good race weekend. There were actually 3 other riders on the grid, all injured, who did an incredible job putting themselves in positions where, considering their injuries, they probably shouldn't have been. Starting with the VR46 boys and Luca Marini. He had a broken collarbone still from a few weeks ago in India, and he managed to get the fastest ever lap, set the lap record of the Mandalika circuit, obviously put it on pole position with that lap, and then get 2nd place in the sprint. He was punted off from a relatively good position in the feature race by Brad Binder, but overall a very impressive weekend from Luca Marini. On the other side of the box, Marco Bezzecchi broke his collarbone earlier this week and had it plated up, and he did incredibly well, getting 3rd in the sprint race and then ending up getting 5th in the feature. Considering that he didn't qualify so well and had to climb back up to those positions, it was a very impressive ride from both of them, and there's not a lot more to say. It was pretty amazing considering their injuries. Shades of Lorenzo in 2013 at Assen, I believe, where he rode with a broken leg. There was, speaking of broken legs, also Alex Rins, who returned from having a broken leg, a very badly broken one at that, and did an incredible job this weekend considering it was his first weekend back. As he finished 9th in the feature race, and very impressive from him. He also benefited from a bit of attrition, but still, considering that he's had so many weeks out, a very good ride from him in his last few for Honda. So yeah, impressive from all 3 of those guys. Tyre gamble. Aleix Espargaro, as well as a few others, decided to take a soft tyre gamble in the race this weekend, and we got to see just how unsuitable that soft tyre is at the Mandalika circuit with how hot it was. Michelin strongly advised him not to do it, but he took it, and whilst in the initial stages Aleix was relatively quick, he wasn't fighting for the podium, but he was doing a pretty good job. He ended up falling down quite rapidly towards the end of the race, being beaten by the likes of Brad Binder, who decided to stop collecting points since he's now out of the title running and start collecting long lap penalties. It was quite interesting to see how much the soft tyre suffered from all of the riders who selected it, and it'll be certainly interesting data for future years for the riders to see how that soft tyre is just not really practical in the feature race. Honda seat discussion. So as we know, before the weekend, Marc Marquez officially announced that he is heading to Gresini, which is rather interesting as it leaves one of the most coveted seats on the MotoGP grid, despite their struggles, open for someone else to go in and try and rebuild the HRC team. It's really quite interesting as lots of people have been linked to that Honda seat, the likes of Miguel Oliveira, Maverick Vinales. Then you've got the two LCR guys who of course already are riding for Honda next year, Johan Zarco and Taka Nakagami being possibly linked to that HRC seat. And it is rather an interesting discussion as this is the rider, whomever HRC selects, who is going to help them along with Joan Mir push towards the future, lead them into the future. And so whilst there are lots of options, including some World Superbike and Moto 2 options possibly, it's going to be really interesting to watch what HRC decide to do, because if they do this right, they should be selecting someone who will be with them for a long time, who they can build the team around along with Joan Mir, and hopefully make a charge back through towards the front over the next couple of years. Rider of the weekend. I'm going to give my Rider of the Weekend award to Marco Bezzecchi. He did an impressive job. Luca Marini would be similarly deserving. So could Fabio Quartararo. But I'm going to give it to Bezzecchi because for him to ride the way he did with that collarbone injury was very impressive. And for him to get the results that he did was also very impressive. So I'm going to give it to him for this weekend. Struggle of the weekend. My struggle of the weekend is pretty easy. I'm going to say it's Marc Marquez. It was just a bit of a nothing weekend for Marc. There were lots of other people crashing, so it wasn't just him. But, I don't know, 2 crashes, very few race laps finished. It just was kind of an off weekend, and I think he's just trying to get to the end of the season when he can try his new Gresini Ducati. Alright, that's 5 things we learned from the Indonesian Grand Prix. We're back next week for what I think is probably the most exciting race of the season at Phillip Island, a track that always delivers. And so hopefully we get lots of good racing action there. A sprint race at Phillip Island is going to be very interesting. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. It's always appreciated. Discuss anything else you want to in the comment section below about this race weekend or HRC seat movements or whatever down in the comment section below. I'd be interested to read your thoughts on all of those things. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.